We all think we know the tomato, right? It's in our salads, our sauces, it's just there. But what if I told you the story of this everyday fruit is this wild ride connecting centuries of fear, mind-boggling variety, economic drama, and even a trip to outer space? To prove it, let's just start with a little puzzle. So what do you think? What could possibly connect a bunch of wealthy, sick European aristocrats from back in the 1700s, a huge economic squeeze happening right now in California, and cutting-edge research happening up on the International Space Station?
You guessed it, it's the tomato. And its surprisingly complicated story really kicks off with a massive case of mistaken identity, a lethal reputation that, believe it or not, stuck around for centuries.
All right, so let's jump back in time. Long before the tomato was a staple in every kitchen, it was actually an object of suspicion and fear. And it even earned itself a pretty sinister nickname.
I mean, just let that sink in for a second. For 200 years, an entire continent looked at this bright red fruit and saw poison. It probably didn't help that botanists had classified it in the deadly nightshade family, which just totally sealed its terrifying reputation. But here's the crazy part. The fear wasn't just some made-up superstition. Rich Europeans were actually getting sick, and some were even dying after eating tomatoes. So what was going on? If the fruit itself wasn't the killer, what was? Well, the answer was this perfect storm of chemistry and social class. See, the wealthy ate off these fancy pewter plates, which were absolutely loaded with lead, and the tomato, being highly acidic, acted like a key, unlocking that toxic lead right from the plate and into their food. The result? Lead poisoning. And of course, the poor tomato took all the blame. It was never the villain here, it was more like the detective, revealing a poison that was already sitting at the table. So, once that myth was finally busted, the tomato didn't just get popular. It completely exploded. The once feared fruit transformed into this global superstar with an unbelievably diverse family. Just try to get your head around that number for a second. Over 10,000 different, distinct varieties of tomato. That is a staggering amount of biodiversity, way, way beyond the handful you might see at the grocery store. And we're not talking about tiny little variations here. No, this is a wild spectrum of flavor, from the rich, almost salty black crim to the zippy, tangy green zebra and the classic, powerful Brandywine. Seriously, each one of these tells a story of a different time and a different place. But all that incredible variety kind of leads us to a very modern problem. Why do the tomatoes we buy at the supermarket so often taste, well, like nothing? The answer, it turns out, is in a trade-off that was made between how they look and how they taste. So, back in the mid-20th century, breeders discovered this genetic mutation that gave tomatoes a perfectly uniform red color, which, is great for marketing. But that exact same gene had a huge hidden cost. It dramatically reduced the fruit's sugar content. They literally bred the flavor right out of it. And this created the great divide we have today. The complex, delicious heirloom versus the durable but often bland commercial tomato. Okay, that brings us right up to the present day, where the tomato is at the center of a major economic crunch. We're talking specifically about the processing tomatoes, the ones used for all our pastes and sauces. So California's processing tomato industry is staring down a massive drop. After a huge year in 2023, the intended production for 2025 has absolutely plummeted. It's going to be the lowest level since 2001. So what's causing this sudden crunch? Well, it really just comes down to simple economics. After a couple of really big production years, warehouses are basically full of tomato paste. And as this expert explains, high interest rates make it super expensive to just sit on all that inventory. So to avoid getting stuck with product they can't sell, companies are simply buying less. And the direct result of all that financial pressure is pretty historic. California is on track to plant the fewest acres of processing tomatoes since the 1970s. It's a really dramatic market correction that just goes to show you how interconnected global finance and our food supply actually are. Okay, so from a poisonous past and an economic present, we're going to end our story with a look to the future. And I mean a future that is literally out of this world. The next chapter for the tomato is being written about 250 miles straight above our heads. So as humanity plans for these longer missions, to the moon and maybe even Mars, one of the biggest challenges is food. You can only pack so many meals. NASA thinks the solution is to grow it right there, and the tomato is a key candidate to become one of the very first extraterrestrial crops. But you can't just plant a regular old tomato on the International Space Station. Scientists have actually engineered these special space tomatoes. They're compact dwarf plants that produce fruit super fast. And what's really critical is that they waste very little energy on inedible stuff like leaves and stems, making them these tiny, efficient little fruit factories that are perfectly designed for life in orbit. And this research is happening right now up on the ISS. Astronauts are studying how these plants handle microgravity, and they're trying to see if they can complete a full life cycle, from one seed all the way to the next, all while zipping around the Earth. So there you have it, from a feared poison apple to an economic bellwether to a potential food for Martian explorers. The journey of the tomato is just this powerful reminder that even the most common things on our plate have these extraordinary stories. Kind of makes you wonder what other secrets are hiding in your next meal.